when the fuck are you guys just gonna wake up to the fact that white guys have it easier? What's the surprise here anymore? I don't know if you saw this today on Twitter. The guy from WeWORK just raised $1 billion.
Man, crazy.
Everybody on Twitter was outraged. How does that make you feel now that you're the one trying to ask for money and you're starting to see that from that perspective?
I mean, well, one, I'm not surprised. That's why I really wasn't upset. I've seen that my whole life. I think about every stage of my life. Ever since I was a kid, there's certain things that I would see happen in the ecosystem that I was operating in. And I'll just be like, okay, that doesn't make sense, but it's very predictable. My perspective on things is I need to see things both sides to like actually make an opinion. You know, this guy fucked up a shit ton of money. But I think the thing we can't forget is at the beginning, everybody thought that shit was brilliant. And then we all kind of saw it in real time just like fall apart. And you know, the argument was like he fucked up once, but it was still a win. Maybe he'll figure it out this time, right? I think there's the founder journey of you have to fail 9 times before you win. On the other side is like, I think resources could also be spread out a little bit more. Like, does he need that much money to do what he's doing? In the last 4 years, anytime that I met a Black and brown founder or a small business owner, we know how to bootstrap shit. We can do with no money what some people need millions of money to do. We'll figure it out. Our attitude isn't, oh, I need money and then I can do X, Y, and Z. We can do X, Y, and Z and then make some money.
You know, I hear these stories all the fucking time. A year and a half ago, I would get jealous and angry. I would complain. I would point up to the sky and be like, why isn't it easier for me? Why don't I have these opportunities? So it's just complain. Yeah. And I think there was a point in my life where I just realized, just shut the fuck up. The world ain't fair. Newsflash. Yeah. Just deal with it and just focus on your fucking lane and do your fucking work, right? And I think that helped me get to where I am now. 100%. Bootstrapping out of necessity. It's kind of like a war story that we're proud after the fact, but it's shitty. Yeah. It's not something people want to do. It is my belief that it does strengthen the perspective. Being able to make a lot with very little, it's a skill that is very, very powerful, particularly in today's market. Yep. It's pretty fascinating. So I feel like you're kind of built on this bootstrapper mentality. So how do you feel that has become an advantage for you in today's market as a founder now? Yep. And how far do you think that can take you? Or do you still feel like this is a negative or an anchor for you?
I think about this pretty often and more recently than in other times where I feel like I've been a founder and an entrepreneur since a very early age. But I think for the first time, I gave myself that badge of like, I'm officially a founder. But I've always been interested with 2 main things. One, innovation and technology and how you can build communities around that. And I think that's where everything is rooted in everything that I do. And I mean, it started off when I was in high school, for example. I was so fascinated with text messages. And, you know, this is like 2008, 2009. At the time, I was throwing a bunch of parties. That's what I was known for. And again, building that piece of community. And I mean, maybe I call it community now. I was just trying to turn it up, right?
Just a bunch of drunk college kids.
You know, the way that you heard about a party, you would get a text message and it said like, party, let's all get wasted or some bullshit. Yeah. But I was like, man, this is inefficient. I went on the internet and I found this company, this startup that was started by these 2 guys at MIT. And essentially what they were doing is they had automated text messages or SMS for like clinics. And what it worked is you would pay like $20, $30 a month. You would get X amount of text messages and you can just send 1 text message out. I was like, yo, this is exactly what I need. So I started doing it for my parties. And then from there, it was like I had barbers, friends that were barbers. And they're like, yo, man, I would love to do that with my clients. Just remind them once a week, come get a haircut. So next thing you know, I had 2 bars, I had a restaurant, I had a couple barbers. And then these guys caught on. The guys call me and they're just like, hey, man, we love what you're doing. If you were in college or like 18 at least, we would hire you. We have to like restrict what you're doing because you're sending too many messages. So they completely disabled my account. But they're like, we don't want to leave you empty-handed because we are going to be completely rebranding our company to doing what you were doing. How much money do you want? That was like my first instance of like, man, I can make money. Now looking back at it, in a way, I exited a small business, but that opened me up to like really identifying one, the innovation and technology, but then the other is how to build community and communicate with community. And then that just kind of went on into like me managing artists. You know, when you grow up in the hood, you either have athletes or musicians. Tech isn't accessible. So I led with musicians because to me it was like, man, we can scale this, we can grow this.
Say 17-year-old Mag is trying to start again. You have a bunch of drive, you have a bunch of ambition, you have a bunch of ideas, but you feel that you can't do it because you're reading in the news like, oh, fuck, I don't have an internship. My dad doesn't have plugs. I don't have the tools, so I don't have a fancy laptop. What's a piece of advice to somebody that's just getting started that feels that they can't because of the lack of access that they have?
I mean, I would say don't romanticize the outcome that you want. So many times, and I still do it to this day, if I go and raise X amount, or if I get X artist, or if I do this, focusing so much on the outcomes is what ruins ultimately the vision and the drive. If you just focus on like the work, instead of saying, I can't wait till I'm at this point or I raise this money, is let me go and show results. And ultimately the money will come, right? If you position yourself in the right way. But I think about so many times I just would romanticize, I can't wait till I'm here. But then I get there and I'm like, that's not even what I wanted. And I think that's a constant reminder that I give myself now, is stop focusing on the outcome that I want.
I like that point. Like, stop romanticizing the outcome. And I feel like I've had the pleasure of speaking with a lot of people that have like really made it. Yeah. And a lot of people have told me that the journey is what matters at the end of the day. I think if you asked every fucking billionaire or hyper successful person what their deepest, darkest desire, it would almost be like doing over again with everything that they know. So it's not so much about the money in the bank anymore. It's about like, I'll never be able to do that again. That was the highest high. And I agree with you. I think I see that a lot myself in my personal entrepreneurship journey. The name of the show is 1 in a Billion, right? So I do think that there is this rare breed within the Midwest, perhaps. Nobody was going to work fucking harder than me in the scope of what I'm trying to build. Fuck it. I will die before that happens. Failure doesn't exist. I'm not gonna fucking stop. I'm gonna get rich or die trying. You have to fundamentally believe that you are the one to do it, not somebody else, and nobody's gonna fucking outwork you. I think there's a set of core values that make up this ideal archetypal person of who the fucking grinder that's gonna just win because they're destined to win. Because destiny isn't pre-planned, it's made every fucking day in the trenches, right? So I know that you share that mentality. I've seen it. The work product just manifests. So what are the core values to you that make somebody truly that fucking person that's going to get shit done? What are the core values that person has, aka that you have, to manifest that?
I mean, it changes so often, right? I feel like the predictable answer is like someone with, they don't take no for an answer mentality. Sometimes a no is, you need a no. Like sometimes you need to be able to hear no to get out of your way, and then it opens up to like a better opportunity. I think nowadays, like at least the answer that I have today and maybe tomorrow is someone that aligns with their vision. Someone who actually doesn't believe in a vision because of the outcome, but they believe in the vision because they truly believe it, right? And I always lead into this idea of, don't sell me something because you want me to buy it. Sell me something because you would buy it. I think people who actually sell what they would buy, I know that's like a very simple answer. If someone walks into a room and tells me, I feel like you should do this, or this is what I'm doing, but I'm doing it because I feel like it's solving a real issue. At a very simple form, that's really all it takes, right? Are you selling something you would buy? Because then you know the consumer better than anybody else because you are the consumer. And this is at any capacity. This is somebody who wants to open up a shop, and someone who wants to open up a bar, someone that wants to start a startup. At every level, you need to be the best customer.
Interesting. There's two things I want to touch on here. Because when I was kind of workshopping the name of the show, 1 in a Billion, I guess from the narcissistic perspective, it's like, oh, you think you're a god, you think you're the best. The point I'm trying to make is the success is a mindset, it's a belief, right? 100%. Like people that believe in anything are the people that really are able to overcome the challenges required to make it to the outcome. So one of the most fundamental core values that I can kind of exceed, and I think you kind of mentioned this as well, is that belief is one of the biggest drivers. I've realized that these things that seem the most complex or complicated about life are always the simplest answered. The cliches are cliches for a reason. And 5 years ago, I was so like, it's got to be more eloquent than that. It's got to be something more fun or more complex to it. But the older I get, I'm like, nah, bro, the simpler, the better. You know, one of the most fundamental answers to life I've realized about myself as well is belief. Is belief in something, not self, right? I think that's a really big differentiator. Going back to the 1 in a Billion, I was like, if you wake up believing you can conquer the world, you will do what it takes. You will die before you fail. You will kind of power through. I think one of those motivators is when you look at yourself in the mirror, you never quite feel successful. You never quite feel like the work is finished. Because the day you actually believe you've reached the top of the game is the day where you failed, because the belief is no longer on the vision that you're trying to create. It's on yourself. You feel like you've achieved it. One of the really big descriptors to our culture today and age is imposter syndrome, right? You feel like you're not worthy. You feel like you're not qualified. You feel like you'll never be able to achieve it. So how do you balance it too, right? How do you balance and enough confidence to feel like you can actually achieve it versus too much confidence where it becomes your downfall. How do you approach those situations, reflecting on where you started, which is at the bottom, and the trajectory that you have? So how do you balance those two things?
Yeah, I mean, man, it's interesting because I always try to think of things in the full spectrum, right? Like the full journey. And early on, I used to think that I had to mold myself to be the part. I remember my first week at Generator. It was my first real job ever. I was 23 years old, and prior to that, I was just like doing shit on my own and figuring things out. And I walk into this ecosystem. I looked at their website. It was primarily all white people. And I went literally to Kohl's and I bought some khakis, some corduroy pants, a flannel. And I was just like, I need to fit the part. And I felt like maybe if I fit in, it'll be easier. I then realized later on that was imposter syndrome. I was like, I literally by definition, I'm like, I'm not going to fit in. Let me try to blend in. And I very quickly realized that blending in was the opposite of why they hired me. When I think about how do I remind myself who I am, is having that sense of self-awareness. On one end, being humble, but on the other side is like, what do I actually bring to the table? Yo, I threw all those flannels and those khakis like 3 days into it because I'm like, this is not me. I couldn't even function. I didn't feel like myself. And I think nowadays, I think it's so important for me to be just authentic to myself.
I got actually chills just from that. I was talking with a friend last week about this, and he said, I'm so fucking sick that every time you hear Latinos talk, we only talk about the trauma. We only talk about the negatives, the fails, the else.
Yeah.
Latinos don't really flex. And because we see it as a very, very negative, but we don't talk about the wins so people don't think we're winning. And even furthermore is our youth doesn't believe that we can win. And that's the biggest injustice of them all. We try so hard to like conform, to blend in, that we kind of like whitewash ourselves and like wash away our heritage, number one. And then number two, we kind of live with this self-deprecating, mentality that like your shit just not good enough, or like you can't do it, or like it's not big enough. And it's a little bit of like our upbringing, the Latino, very traditional Latino upbringing. You have somehow been able to puncture through that glass ceiling. Not everybody can do it. I've learned this the hard way. I've seen it, because to me it's so intuitively easy to be like, bro, just punch through. What the fuck are you crying about? Wake the fuck up. You can do it. You are good at what you do. Accept that you're world class and putting the fucking effort to do it. I've always been that kid that if I didn't know something, I Googled it till I was the best at it. It seems so intuitive, and I feel like to you as well, right? But it's just not it. And I reflect on this a lot lately, that I think it's because we don't have that representation readily available for us to see somebody be like, fuck, Mag is doing it, Ruben's doing it, Alex doing it. How do you think we can fix that? Do you feel like you have a sense of responsibility to it? And if so, what is the best way that you can contribute to end this culture of trauma? Because that's the key word that keeps coming to me. How do we get past the fucking trauma and focus on the opportunity?
I play to win, right? I think fuck all the humility. Like, we could talk about humility all day, right? And I'm playing to win. And I think the best way that we can teach other people is at a very early age, we understand what winning is. Everyone in society over the age of 4 understands what winning is. Winning doesn't mean winning all the time, but understanding what winning looks like. I used to take the responsibility really serious, right, in my mind, in the sense of like, anytime I win, I needed to go make sure that like I spread some of the wealth. But then I realized that also slows you down, right? And it's not a burden for us to hold all the time. That sometimes the best way to help our community is by winning ourselves.
Are not going to make everybody successful. Not everybody's meant to be rich or successful. Wealth comes in a lot of other forms. And I think in the capitalistic perspective of it, the more you can ever hope to give a man is an opportunity. From there is Darwinism and work ethic. You just have to believe. I can't believe it for you. I can't will it into existence for you. But so long that I know that what we do today can make it into the world where everybody just truly has the same equal access to begin, That's as much as I can fucking do.
Yeah.
Right? And right now, I know Latinos, particularly Mexicans, don't have access to that. When we are a very substantial piece of the buying power in this country, I'm going to fucking die in the hill making sure that at least Mexicans have equal footing for that. And that's as much as I can really fucking contribute. I'm not here to fix the problems in society. I'm here to help with the bias problem. And I think the way to fix that is to create bias for the people that look like me.
Yep. We're historically have been told that we are not enough, even though we know that we're beyond enough. When I think about like, man, why am I the right person to build this? Yes, I have this experience with the idea of data, and I know crypto, and I know the music industry, but I feel like I firsthand have had enough conversations with artists and creatives to understand that you're undervalued and you're underpaid. And the excuses are X, Y, and Z. But if you really like pull the curtain back, I've seen both sides, right? I understand now how money operates in this like VC world and institutional money side. And then I also seen how artists operate and, you know, how the creative side. And then I've also seen how the label side works. I've seen the full ecosystem from where the money comes from to the people who write the checks to the artists who end up getting the checks. And man, those checks are a fraction, man. They're like 0.003%, right? That ends up in the hands of the creator. I always think about like the artists, the people that we're ultimately serving with this startup, no different than a small business, right? There's this argument that there's only going to be ever X amount of artists in the world that can make money off of music. But the argument isn't true, because that's like saying there's only 50 taquerias that are going to make money off of tacos. Hell no. You go to any city, you open up a taqueria. If they don't have one, you open one up, you're going to make money. There's millions of Mexican restaurants probably around the world. Millions might be a reach, but there's probably hundreds of thousands. There's only 50,000 artists worldwide on Spotify making there's only 11,000 artists making over $50,000 on Spotify worldwide.
11,000.
11,000.
That's shockingly low.
And that's something that Spotify wears with a badge of honor. They're like, we did that. And, you know, there's 7 million artists on the platform, and it's growing every single day. And the idea of community is important. Artists know how to build community. Shit, brands use artists to build community for them. That to me is why I feel like I've seen all the full spectrum of every side of this industry. And I know the lies, I know the truths. I want to focus on building that bridge.
This is kind of like the last topic I want to explore here.
Yeah.
I think the biggest essence of the crypto revolution is this topic of ownership. And obviously, the topic of ownership is so deeply ingrained in a negative way within the psyche of the Latino or even immigrant communities as a whole because of what you said. Like, we have been told we're not worth as much.
Yep.
Yet we're the ones that build everything. We harvest everything. We farm everything. We manufacture everything.
Yep.
It's just not a name on the deed, but all of the mano de obra is us.
Yep.
This concept of ownership has been kind of used as a form of control. We don't own the production facility or the entity, but we own the knowledge.
Yep.
I want to bring it back again to that younger version of you and me, right? Like, we're talking to a 15, 16-year-old kid in Milwaukee in the era of blockchain, in the era of like you can teach yourself anything on YouTube, in the era of like mentorship is decentralized now. What would you tell that person?
I would say like start with the questions, right? Identify what are the questions. What are the things you don't know? And I always tell this to my little brother and my little sister. I'm like, what do you not know? Before you ask me a question, write it down. And then process of elimination. Can I find the answer to this question? All roads will lead to answers, right? You ask the question, you'll find an answer. Whether it's the answer you like or the answer you don't like, is for you to determine. If you ever find a golden question that doesn't have an answer, that is your opportunity right there. Do you believe in that golden question enough to pursue that for the rest of your life? And that's what I've been stuck on now for 12 years since I've been in this like journey of leading to these golden questions. And then I spend the next 3 to 4 years exploring this golden question. Hopefully that makes sense. But I think lead in the questions, find the questions that don't have answers, try to find your answer.
I wish that was taught at an earlier age because I think it's great advice.
Yeah.
Simple is better, I think, is something that kind of echoed. We try to make this big deal about mentorship, but like you could be a mentor by just posting YouTube videos. Like we think that everything needs a very complicated set of core values, but honestly, the cliches are there for a reason. I think network is very important. It's probably the biggest. I'm very lucky to have a crazy network, and all the people that so far I've talked to have that as well.
Yeah.
But how do we open that up?
But I think the one in the middle that's the most important personally for me that isn't ever talked about is who do you want to know? Or like a thing where like comment below, like who do you want to know? And at a minimum, I'll find you an email or I'll find you a contact form where you can go and send your story and maybe they'll reach out to you. But I think that's what I lead with. I feel like that's the best solution, you know, because we don't know everybody. We know a lot of people, but the world is really small. Between my network, your network, and the other people that we know, getting in front of somebody, it's probably it's not that hard.
Right. Because capitalists will always jump at the opportunity. If there's money to be made, if there's friendships to be had, if there's experiences to be gained, people will always pick up the phone. So 100%. I think it matters what you're saying. That's a perfect lesson, I think, for today.